Leo lived where the world seemed to end and the sky began. His home was a small stone cottage, clinging to the side of a great mountain. Below, the valleys were a patchwork of green and brown, and above, the peaks were sharp teeth against the blue. He was a boy of the mountains, his skin toughened by the wind, and his eyes used to scanning vast distances. His only constant companion was a scruffy dog named Buster, a creature as wild and free as the land they roamed. Together they were a familiar sight, a small boy and his loyal dog, their silhouettes etched against the endless horizon. Their days were simple, filled with the rhythms of nature. Leo's family was small, his father a quiet man who taught him the ways of the mountains, and his mother whose songs were as soft as the evening mist. But mostly it was just Leo and Buster. They would explore the winding paths, chase rabbits through the tall grass, and lie on sun-warmed rocks, watching the eagles circle high above. Leo knew the names of the trees and the calls of the birds. He understood the language of the wind and the secrets whispered by the streams. This wilderness was not just his backyard. It was his teacher, his playground, and his whole world. Buster was more than just a pet. He was a shadow, a friend, a silent guardian. The dog had a keen sense of the mountain's moods. He could smell a coming storm long before the clouds gathered and could sense danger in the rustle of leaves. Leo trusted Buster's instincts completely. They shared their food, their warmth, and their silent thoughts. In this vast, lonely landscape, their bond was a small bright flame against the immense wilderness. They were two parts of a single story, their lives woven together by the threads of mountain life, unaware of the trials that lay ahead. This life, though isolated, had forged a strength in Leo that he didn't even know he possessed. He wasn't a boy accustomed to the comforts of a town or the company of many friends. His friendship was with the rocks, the trees, and the loyal animal at his side. He learned to be self-reliant, to read the signs the wild offered, and to find contentment in solitude. The mountain had shaped him, carving its resilience into his very soul. He was prepared for challenges, but he could never have imagined the journey that was waiting for him, a journey that would test every lesson he had ever learned. The day began like any other, with the pale sun rising over the eastern peaks. Leo was tasked with taking the family's small herd of goats to a higher pasture where the grass was sweet and plentiful. Buster trotted ahead, his tail a happy flag waving in the morning air. The goats moved slowly, their bells tinkling a gentle melody that echoed through the quiet valley. The air was still, almost too still, and the sky was a flawless, brilliant blue. There was no sign, no warning of the fury that was gathering just beyond the highest ridges, waiting to descend upon the unsuspecting mountain. By midday, a change began to stir. The wind, once a gentle whisper, started to moan through the pines, carrying a sudden, sharp chill. Dark, bruised-looking clouds rolled in from the north, swallowing the sun and casting a gloomy shadow over the landscape. Leo felt a prickle of unease. He knew this was no ordinary mountain shower. This was something fierce, something wild. He called out to Buster, his voice tight with urgency, and began trying to gather the scattered goats. But the animals were spooked, their instincts screaming at them to find shelter, and they bolted in every direction, disappearing into the rocky crags. The storm broke with a terrifying roar. Rain fell not in drops, but in solid, wind-driven sheets that stung Leo's skin and blinded him. Thunder cracked overhead, a sound so loud it felt like the mountain itself was breaking apart. He chased after the goats, his calls lost in the deafening noise. He slipped on wet rocks, scrambling through dense thickets, his focus solely on finding the lost animals. In his panic and confusion, he lost all sense of direction. Every path looked the same, every tree a twisted, unfamiliar shape in the swirling mist and driving rain. He was pushing deeper and deeper into the unknown. When the storm finally began to recede, leaving a trail of broken branches and newly formed streams, Leo found himself utterly and completely lost. The familiar peaks and valleys were gone, replaced by a maze of strange, forbidding terrain. The goats were nowhere to be seen. He called out, his voice small and trembling in the vast, dripping silence that followed the storm. The only reply was the mournful sigh of the wind. A cold dread, colder than the rain had been, began to seep into his bones. He was alone, adrift in a wilderness that had suddenly turned from a familiar home into a hostile alien world. As dusk began to bleed across the sky, painting the clouds in shades of purple and grey, a profound fear took hold of Leo. The familiar comfort of his home, the smell of his mother's cooking, the warmth of the hearth, it all felt a lifetime away. Here, the world was dark and menacing. The trees took on monstrous shapes, their branches like skeletal arms reaching for him. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves sounded like a predator stalking him in the growing shadows. He had never felt so small, so vulnerable. The mountain, his lifelong friend, now seemed like a giant sleeping beast that could swallow him whole. Desperate for shelter, he stumbled through the darkening woods until he found a massive, ancient oak tree that had been hollowed out by time and lightning. The opening was like a dark mouth, but it offered a refuge from the wind and the unseen terrors of the night. He crawled inside, curling himself into a tight ball in the cramped, earthy-smelling space. The wood was damp and cold against his skin. This hollow tree was his fortress, but it also felt like a tomb. He was trapped, a tiny, insignificant creature at the mercy of the vast, indifferent wilderness. Sleep was impossible. His mind raced with terrifying thoughts. He pictured his parents, their faces etched with worry, calling his name into the night. Would they be searching for him? Had they found the scattered goats? The loneliness was a physical weight, pressing down on his chest and making it hard to breathe. He strained his ears, listening for any sign of Buster, but there was only the sound of his own frantic heartbeat and the lonely hoot of a distant owl. Tears he had been holding back finally streamed down his face, silent and hot in the cold, dark hollow. That first night was the longest of Leo's life. He learned the true meaning of fear, not the thrilling fear of a ghost story told by a warm fire, but a deep, primal terror that grips your soul. It was the fear of the unknown, the fear of being forgotten, the fear of never seeing home again. He shivered, not just from the cold, but from the chilling realization of his own helplessness. As he lay there, listening to the strange and unsettling symphony of the nocturnal forest, a grim determination began to form in his heart. If he was going to survive, he had to conquer this fear. He had to make it through this night. When the first rays of dawn pierced the darkness, they brought not just light, but a sliver of hope. Leo crawled out of the hollow tree, his body stiff and sore, but his mind clear. The fear of the night was replaced by a new, steely resolve. He was alive. He had survived. Now the real work began. His father's words echoed in his mind. The mountain provides for those who know how to look. He knew he needed three things to survive: water, food, and shelter. His life depended on finding them, and he would have to use every bit of knowledge the mountains had taught him. His first priority was water. Thirst was a dry, scratching presence in his throat. He remembered his father showing him how to find streams by following the terrain downhill. He started walking, his eyes scanning the ground for signs of moisture, for patches of brighter green vegetation. After what felt like an eternity, he heard it, a faint trickling sound. He pushed through a thicket of ferns, and there it was, a small, clear stream tumbling over moss-covered rocks. He fell to his knees and drank deeply, the cold, pure water a balm to his parched throat and a relief to his anxious spirit. Next came food. His stomach ached with a hollow emptiness. He knew he couldn't be picky. He scanned the forest floor, his eyes searching for familiar edible plants. He found a patch of wild berries, their bright red colour a welcome sight. He carefully identified them, making sure they were the safe kind his mother used to pick for jams. He ate them slowly, savouring each sweet, tart burst of flavour. It wasn't much, but it was enough. He also remembered how to find grubs under rotting logs. Not a pleasant thought, but his father had always said, "Protein is protein." Survival was about doing what was necessary. With immediate needs met, he turned his attention to a more permanent shelter. The hollow tree was a good emergency refuge, but it was damp and cramped. He needed a place that was dry and defensible. He found a small overhang on a rocky cliff face, protected from the wind and rain. He spent the rest of the day gathering fallen branches and large palm-like leaves. He wove them together to create a lean-to against the rock, forming a small triangular space. It was crude and simple, but it was his. As he finished his work, a sense of pride washed over him. He wasn't just lost anymore, he was a survivor. So, days began to blur into a new, predictable pattern. Leo's life was now governed by the sun and his own basic needs. Each morning, he would wake at dawn, check the simple snares he had learned to set for small game, and then, forage for berries, roots, and edible greens. His afternoons were spent improving his shelter, gathering firewood, or exploring the immediate area, always careful to mark his trail so he wouldn't get lost again. He became an expert at finding clean water sources and learned to recognize the subtle signs of the forest: a bent twig, a faint animal track, the direction of the wind. Leo was no longer just a boy. He was a part of the wilderness now. His senses grew sharp, really honed by necessity. He could distinguish the calls of different birds, and somehow he just knew which ones signaled the presence of a predator. He learned to move silently through the undergrowth, his steps light and sure. The forest, which had once seemed so menacing, was slowly becoming familiar again, though it was a different kind of familiarity. It was not the comfort of home, but rather the respect one gives to a powerful, untamed force. He was surviving, actually even thriving, in this wild environment. But despite his growing competence, a deep and persistent ache of loneliness settled in his heart. In the quiet moments, as he sat by his small, smoky fire in the evening, the silence would become deafening.